But hello, everyone. Welcome to our World Today, for live discussion. Today, we are talking about something very important, which is like what is happening in Congo. It's been something that has been publicized pretty much like every day, every week on social media for the past few months and weeks, but it stems from a conflict that has been around in Congo for 30 years. And we felt that it was high time we talked about it because it's not getting better. And I think a lot of people are kind of misinformed about the situation. So Isaiah and Sage are the ones that did the research for it this week. Thank you guys for doing that. And yeah, we just wondered. I think Nadia did too, so I don't know if she may have some things to tell us about it when she joins us. But I would like you guys to see to kind of explain a little bit, like summarize the situation for the people that are watching, so that they can understand like what's actually happening, because a lot of people aren't really aware of what's going on.
Yeah, so I guess to provide the basic background for this, not too long. So, the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, right? It's a massive area. The DRC, you can also call it the DRC. It's the second largest country in Africa. It's a massive country. So, people on the western side of the country, in Kinshasa, the capital, where there's like 20 plus million people or 19 million or something, they may not they may feel far removed from what's going on. And all the way on the other side of the country in the east. And so in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, um, it has been the site of conflict, like you were saying, for like 30 years. And it's like many areas, in on the African continent. It's really ethnically diverse, so there's so many different peoples out there, and it also has a high population of people from different ethnic groups from Rwanda and also from Burundi and Uganda. So there have been conflicts out there for the past 30 years, for a long time. Part of it fueled by ethnic tensions, and part of, in to the some extent, those ethnic tensions have stemmed from what happened in Rwanda in the 90s. The Rwandan genocide, and there are different groups out there that have been fighting for like control of territory and control of the mineral resources in the Eastern DRC. And another thing that gets overlooked a lot is that most of, I think most of the minerals used in like higher technology stuff, like in smartphones, comes from there. And so they call it the three T's: tin, tantalum, and tungsten, and also cobalt. A lot of that is found there, and many other things. One interesting fact I learned from YouTube is that the first atomic bomb created, like in the US, was made from uranium from the Congo. So it's such a mineral resource rich country, and there's just been a lot of fighting over that. And so, yeah, this it came to our attention this week, especially because there was like a bombing, I believe, right? It was a bombing in a refugee camp near the city of Goma, which Goma is the capital of a region in kind of near Uganda area in the DRC. And Goma has 2 million people, so it's like it is a big urban center where I assume people could get help more. But a lot of those regions in the Eastern DRC, they're like really remote, like really rugged terrain. So it's kind of made everything more complicated there, you know. So yeah.
So basically, what we have is a conflict over different ethnic groups that was already happening 30 years ago in that region. Um, some people say that it is fueled by Rwanda because of how the same ethnic groups were already like fighting at that moment, and also for economic growth and basically for the rare metals that are used in each one of our screens and batteries that everyone wants to buy and exploit. And yeah, basically Goma, it seemed like was or is kind of a city where refugees could like take shelter to not be killed. And it was attacked and bombed last week. And it's on the very far east side of the country. Um, so my question would be like, do we know which ethnic group or sides of that conflict attacked whom? Because a lot of people on social media are talking about a genocide of the Congo people, like the Congo population, but we don't actually know what are the sides, what are the different like intricacies, like who is fighting who, basically. And I'm guessing that because this is like a kind of an international, like it's over borders and over ethnic groups conflicts, like there is a little bit of confusion there too. But could we try to understand like who's fighting who at the moment?
Yeah, and it is like, from my understanding, it is complex, but I don't have a very like thorough understanding of it because like from what I've read, there are literally like hundreds of armed groups in that region,
Mm.
you know. So because of yeah, just a lot of factors. Like I think a lot of them want to get some territory and mineral rights and stuff like that. But um it's I think they were saying that the M23 rebel group was most likely responsible. And I believe so that particular rebel group um, is like is itself a what's the right word for this? Like I don't know, a combination of a bunch of different rebel groups that have some autonomy, but they call themselves M23 off of um, March 23rd. It was like, I think March 23rd, 2009, the Congolese government made some sort of agreement with them um, that which that they said that they violated. So there's kind of been to a history of like well, Congo was ruled by this one guy who was kind of dictatorial, Mobutu, for a long time, and
Mhm.
then there was Laurent Kabila as well, and then his son became president. And there's been a lot of abuses, and there hasn't always been. There's been a sense of injustice felt by different ethnic groups, and I think the M23 rebel group. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is mostly made up by Tutsi people, and they were the Tutsi people in Rwanda were the main like target for the Rwandan genocide in the 90s. So, and then they kind of still carry, they still they still have this there's still conflict there, and Rwanda claims that the Democratic Republic of the Congo is funding organizations that are a literal continuation of or offshoots of the organizations that perpetuated the Rwandan genocide. So that's kind of part of this too. So I think M23, correct me if I'm wrong, is like mainly ethnic Tutsi people, and then there's also some groups that are ethnic Hutu, which these organizations are carryovers from the Rwandan genocide. So yeah, but I'm not completely sure. And I don't think anyone's totally sure about like who perpetuated it.
I'm not certain we're sure either, but that would explain why the Tutsi were linked with Rwanda, at least, I would say. I'm not sure people are kind of aware of like how linked these two conflicts are, but it feels kind of confusing, and also it feels like it feels like we see that a lot in certain countries around the world at the moment. However, like there is a lot of I would say power grab in place, like obviously controlling the people, the minerals and things like that, the resources, because like again, we're seeing that pattern of not respect for life, where they're literally killing whole cities, ethnic groups that don't agree with them, um, and taking children as um, basically like soldiers, like the children soldiers that we have seen so much in different conflicts in Africa, but are still continuing in Congo. And it's so difficult to kind of understand like the base of all of it, but it feels like there are some ancestral hurt there that people are using as kind of an excuse to continue instability at that moment, because we know that the differences in Tutsi and Hutu people, they didn't get along like for millennia. And they were fighting over terrain for the longest time as well. And I'm guessing that the way Africa was like kind of split post-colonization or even during was not in agreement with how they felt, and that's how most of the conflict in Africa, in terms of ethnicity, started. However, I'm sensing that there is like this kind of taking this as an excuse to run with it decades after and try to steer conflict in order to take power um, at the expense of local population. So I just want to have a feel of you guys. This is a very simplified explanation and history behind that. And obviously, like even us don't have like all of the details, but I just want to get a feel of like how you guys are think about this conflict. Do you agree with this? Do you have other ideas that other thoughts that sprang up when you researched about it? And yeah, I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
No, yeah, totally. Yeah. I loved the way that you phrased that because I felt like it just felt like it was really like precise, you know, about what's going on and about how like yeah, just using those deep wounds of the past and the traumas, and it's kind of just perpetuating these conflicts and stuff. And yeah, I think it's that was accurate. And also like there's very valuable resources involved, right, with the minerals. So I feel like those are the two pieces of it, you know, as far as I can tell, you know.
So I feel like it's a little bit concerning that there's so many humanitarian crises happening around the world at the same time that there are so many national general elections happening. And it kind of feels like there's a lot of turmoil across the world, and it's economic, it's humanitarian, it's fighting. I mean, the genocide in Rwanda kind of springs to mind a few years, probably not a few years ago, probably a couple of decades ago, kind of thing. So, all of those things are stacking up. And I mean, if you look at our next story, which would be Haiti and all of their humanitarian crises, the Yemen humanitarian crisis, the Palestinian-Israeli humanitarian crisis. It all feels like there's this war against humanity and dignity, and that people aren't actually settling into their sovereignty. So there's a lot of fighting for sovereignty, but while at the same time discounting the sovereignty of others. And so these conflicts constantly arise. And Africa has been a primary example. It kind of feels like the trauma bond here is fighting. It's not finding peace or peaceful resolutions. So we've had lots of countries across Africa have things like truth and reconciliation commissions, but it doesn't feel like they've actually completely settled into that reconciliation pathway. Kind of feels like it was a lot of lip service and not enough actual true intention. Because if the intent was there, I almost feel like if the intent was there, they would have followed through in a more positive manner that might have started to reduce these conflicts. And then we also need to remember that there are other parties around the world that profit from sowing discord within nations, that profit from destabilizing currencies in certain countries. And so that, it's just like this, it feels like this tightrope that humanity is walking, and the balancing act is so precarious that it could tipple in any direction. And God forbid that it tipples in the direction of irreconcilable differences.
Yeah, I think like we're in a very delicate position in the world right now, and I don't think that people are actually understand like the scope of how this impacts everybody and why different countries are so involved in different different conflicts, even though like they cannot be involved in all of them. I feel like there is definitely like an attempt to strengthen the world order and the bonds of defense and diplomacy that already exists in order to kind of contain these conflicts to regional, even though the problem is like we cannot intervene in place of these countries. We can kind of have try to mitigate in there in order to have a little bit more peace. That is done with various like amounts of success, and because it's gotten it's to such bad places in the past, like I feel like a lot of countries are very, you know, they don't know how to act, or they may have to revise how they act about these different international conflicts. Like we definitely like need to have new processes in place in order to know how to face all of these different like powers in place and without like taking sovereignty off of the country itself. So that's something that is very difficult to navigate, and I feel like a lot of people don't understand that. I feel like yes, we have the sides of like trying to mitigate into peace treaties, trying to send humanitarian help on the soil. But like we've seen that it's not enough anymore, especially when the countries are not going to respect it afterwards. Like for example, like we thought that we had learned the lesson with the Rwandan genocide, and then 30 years from here, we're still in that same place, in another country, yes, but in a country that is very near, where Rwanda still has maximum level security at every step, meaning like my parents were there like a few years ago, I think, meaning like your car is searched when you enter every public institution, you are searched and everything is controlled. So is it something due to the trauma of genocide, the fact that the other countries on the side don't like them much, or even the fact that their own ethnic groups are mitigating in these other countries. And it feels like, there's definitely like a feeling of lessons not learned and needing to maintain world peace in a different way so that we don't go again into these cycles of world conflicts. And yeah, that's what I have to say about this. But it feels like the world is choosing peace. Like obviously, like we're trying to help in any way we can. Like even if there's a misunderstanding, even if people feel like countries are not necessarily doing as much as they could or not being on the right side of some conflicts, like it feels like we're actually doing something as a system, but it also feels like there's something that needs to shift. And protest, humanitarian aid, and treaties are not enough anymore when we know that one or several sides are not going to respect them. And also, like, we need to be very clear about the intention of all the groups. And even if a group, like, like M23, like, it's very clear that they're not for human life, even though, like, they may be fighting at the core. At the beginning, they started fighting for necessary cause, which is like the end of a dictator. And I think we need to remember that same treatments for all the conflicts and basically saying like, hey, what is this government doing? Are their intentions clear? Yes, no, we don't know. And what is this rebel group doing? Are their intentions clear? And I think this is not the time to take sides, but rather the time to find a new way to mitigate into these, which is not like victory and defeat, but communication and distribution of power in a way that we haven't seen before, that we ourselves know as people who work a spiritual path, but that some people may not know, you know? So any closing thoughts on this? Or should we get to the next story?
Yeah, I guess that yeah, we do need a different way of going about it, but um I'm certainly not sure of what it is. I know that you mentioned Granville, the Truth and Reconciliation committees and stuff like that, and how they were common, in many countries on the continent. But like, I don't know. I'm not really sure what it is, but I feel like obviously, like spiritually, it has to do with facing those feelings and those traumas and stuff like that. And for people to, because when you don't fully acknowledge something and feel something, then it does run your life. So when I feel into that, the situation and stuff, and just from reading about it and watching stuff about it and everything, the feeling I get is there's this simmering kind of like um hatred and anger, and like it feels, yeah, it's like traumatic, like kind of rage response and kind of stuff like that. And it's kind of cultivated and perpetuated to some extent. And yeah, by just like, to facing those things, it's not something that you do externally. It's like something that you do internally, and everybody's learning that in their own lives. And yeah, just not to let that run your life. But yeah, because it's such a messy conflict, and it's in a region of the world that can be kind of inaccessible, and stuff, and hard to reach in some areas. It's very complicated. And so, like you were saying, Yurine, like it's not something where you can easily, I sort of like take sides. And so, but I don't know. I feel like for I think we can point out the spiritual thing that needs to happen, but I'm not too sure about anything else. But I was curious if either of you guys had any more thoughts on it. Yeah.
So I kind of feel like the core of it is still a lack of trust. And I think it speaks to what Urine was talking about. And maybe to frame it and even coin a term, it feels like ancestral trauma. So that feeling of unforgiveness that's like at the core of not moving forward, at the core of not wanting to partner in a healthy manner. So there's a lot of contrast being called in all the time. And it almost feels like that has been the choice of lesson. There hasn't been a choice to operate out of a space of love for my brother or sister and understanding of my brother or sister and engaging with them in a manner that I would want to be engaged with. So there's almost these human principles that feel like they're missing out of the equation. And again, it goes back to what was actually reconciled during all these processes, because a lot of the wounds seem to have festered, and it kind of almost requires a level of cauterization for healing to happen. So you kind of have this thing of shaving off the rotting flesh, and I know it's a very graphic description, but that's how the healing takes place. Like you have to get to the core of the festering, and it's just not happening. So this might actually just be the thing that tipples it in that direction so that the core starts to be understood, so that a new choice of healing is made.
Yeah, and I feel like we won't know the right answer anyway, if we don't look at the wounds before. And I think it would be a disservice to all these communities in conflict to try to make a decision for them before they're ready to look at the wounds. And I think that is part of why um, there is no point in intervening too much in some of the places, because you are going to um, say, make an alcoholic change and force him to go to rehab. But if it's not like ready to make that transformation, it's going to go back south again and maybe be worse off than what it was before. And so not only is it not like one man or woman thinking process solution that needs to happen, it's something that needs to happen with partnership, and there's definitely not enough partnership. We can't replace the partnership for people in conflict, right? We cannot, we simply cannot. Like, we can say like, okay, this is our part. Maybe like the splitting of the countries, it definitely didn't help these countries, but like the core of it was already there, like they were already fighting. And I feel like if you're not ready to really look at it, really look at yourself in the mirror, really look at your hatred, really look at where you would have still carried on the conflict, even if the circumstances were different, well then, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, but like nobody can do anything for it. And again, like we can try to mitigate, we can avoid like as many casualties as we can, which we must do. But we cannot heal in people's place. We cannot change their mind and the way they see the world and their intentions in their place. So that's not to say that we always have like the right answers, like the right way. Um, as people who kind of live in like Western countries, but like I feel like we just need to generalize like the willingness to look at yourself and where it hurts, before projecting it on people. And I'm hoping that this is the way that people choose. And hopefully like we can get that to a role as soon as possible so that most people can benefit from that. Maybe change can start to happen from there. Maybe that's our piece and nothing more. Like we don't have to rethink systems if we know that our piece is where um we can like heal conflict from the inside, within oneself first, and then with other relationships. Yeah. So I am curious. I've been curious for 2 weeks about talking on Haiti and the new government there. And I would like Grenville to kind of summarize the things that are going on there and kind of explain what is happening because there's been a lot in Haiti in the past few years. And we've talked a little bit about it, maybe like a little bit 2 years ago. But yeah, what's going on here?
Yeah, so from the high level understanding that I gained from the article, there's been a lot of instability in Haiti from before 2019, but I feel like 2019 seems to have been a more catalytic time because of the fact that the constitutionally due elections were postponed in 2019, and then their president was assassinated in 2021. He was then replaced by a prime minister whose leadership doesn't seem to have been strong enough for the country, and then that led to his resignation and a whole new government coming in. Well, a new prime minister and the formation of a new government in order to kind of re-establish their track towards democracy with the support of the Caribbean community. So there's a lot hinging on this transitional government in terms of putting them back on the track of democracy. But the instability is not only fueled by political problems, it's fueled by gangs that are literally ensconced in every layer of their society. So the ask of this transitional government is to somehow move the country past the dire control that these gangs have on all those layers of society. There is also a lot of support from the Caribbean community, but obviously, as you said, Doreen, you cannot make the choice for somebody else. So there's a lot of support in terms of saying we will help you in this transition. We will provide some defense in this transition if that's what you choose to do, but understand that your democracy is kind of on a knife edge. So it could topple in any direction if you don't actually do this appropriately and accordingly for your country. The other nuance is that Haiti is the first Black republic across the world. So there's even more of a view from the perspective that what is the choice here? What are we descending into or ascending out of? So there's a lot of almost a lack of confidence across certain opinions in the news and things like that. There's almost a lack of confidence in Haiti's ability to re-establish and then also embed democracy completely in the country. And that is leading to many crises across the country, of which part of it is obviously a humanitarian crisis as well, because of the fact that their living conditions are so dire, and this gang infiltration and their hold on society. So there's a lot riding on this transitional government, but I do believe that while we can't make the choice for them, they do need significant amounts of support from the Caribbean community.
Yeah, my understanding from what we've spoken about over the years is that there was like there were a series of abduction happening like almost every day in the country from the moment like the election were postponed, or maybe were actually happening before, but like we didn't necessarily hear about them. And there was that kind of complacency from the government that was happening. And then when it was time for a change because it was assassinated, I mean, the situation was already like a little bit out of hand. And if the leadership was strong enough, like nothing would happen. And so right now we are left with a question of like what to save. And I feel maybe a sense of, as a Caribbean person, and also as someone who's followed like the situation in Haiti, probably ever since like the earthquake in 2010, because we helped a lot with that. Um, the feeling is kind of one of despair and powerlessness to go anywhere from there. And I'm thinking like there may be solutions to go from here, but again, like I've seen this kind of solution happen when people take a really hard look at themselves and heal. So I'm unsure what people are going to do, because there is still like it's not even the feeling of despair and powerlessness. There's still this feeling for me of like stagnation. And it seems like since no one knows where to go and they're scared of going a path that is going to descend rapidly, like they'll try to have that feeling of stagnation for as long as they can. And that doesn't sit well, because it's feeling like there's a lot of anxiety underneath that. But yeah, because there is a lack of decision direction, like I'm feeling like they need significant help, but we cannot help if we don't have like precise direction on what to help on, what to do first. And that's where it is difficult, because it's feeling kind of like the government is saying like, well, we don't know. CARICOM, like, the organization of the Caribbean countries that is helping Haiti, they're saying like, hey, CARICOM, some help, some advice, and saying like, we cannot make this decision for you. I'm sorry. And yeah, it's kind of where it's at right now. So yeah, I would be curious to know like what could be a solution there for them, because it kind of feels stuck. And maybe we can look at that stuck feeling first before talking about anything else. So do you guys have any insights on that?
So I definitely agree with you on the stuckness, but I feel like the core of it is the sense of powerlessness. So, they install a leader, his leadership falls flat, and so the next one comes in, and his leadership falls flat, and the next one comes in. And then you have this transitional government, which we all know when you're in a transitional phase, you probably feel stuck because you don't know to what extent you can exercise your power. And if they have a vested interest in wanting to be in those powerful places, they're probably going to do it in a much less confrontational way, so that people vote for them and all those other weird and wonderful things. So the balance for me is very, very thin at the moment, but it also feels like potentially there's almost the sense of something falling through the ground. So, almost that complete breakdown so that there's new movement. And we've all seen it in our own personal lives, in the lives of people around us, that when you fall flat, you sometimes just actually get up stronger. And I'm not advocating for anybody encouraging them to fall on their faces kind of thing, but I also feel like that might just catalyze them into movement, and they catalyze them into truly choosing the life that they want.
Any feelings, Isaiah and Sage?
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel the same. I do feel like it's about overcoming powerlessness and stuff like that. And I really liked, what you were just saying, Granville, about that, and how, yeah, um, sometimes having an experience of like hitting rock bottom is what really facilitates change, because you're just not seeing it. Otherwise, you're just not open to seeing it. That definitely happened in my life, at some point. And it ended up being a good thing for me, because I found spirituality and, yeah, everything. So the same thing could happen, you know, for Haiti. But yeah, it is hard to tell though, from the outside perspective, what a good solution would be. But
Mhm.
it does feel like it does feel like really, yeah, claiming full responsibility and power and agency in one situation. And obviously, we're not saying that looks specifically like this and this. Like, no, we're not saying that. We're just saying, like, spiritually, that is what this has to do with. And yeah, and I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like, there needs to be that sense of empowerment, and a lot of compassion is due there, because, like, Haiti was like this country that rose up in the 19th century against France. It was, a successfully throwing off colonial control. Yeah, establishing this, like, independent nation of people, who freed themselves, from enslavement and stuff like that. And like from the beginning, there was always hostility toward them. Like the United States wasn't that happy in the 19th century that happened. There are a lot of countries that were like against them. France wasn't supportive, as you could guess, at that time. So there's been a lot of that. And then, the US supported, um, I think, a coup through which the dictator Duvalier came to power there. And he was in power for decades. And he was just this brutal, awful leader, right? Who tried to use violence to try to get something, and try to get his way and shit like that. And that's basically the exact same dynamic that's going on now with all of those gangs, that I feel. And so, but I feel like it's about being like, you know what, like, regardless of everything that has happened and that is happening, um, it's like we always have a choice. We always have power. Like, there's always some way, and we're not gonna just accept this kind of crap. But again, like, from an outside perspective, not knowing anything, it's hard to give any specifics. But that, I feel like that's all that I could possibly say about that. I don't know.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. I think, yeah, I think your words are very helpful. Like, I think like it's definitely, we're not like, even if we have a background of economics and political science and things like that, like we're not like the experts that are going to go into like the precise like political dynamics of trying to change these countries, but I feel like your words already serve something because, like, for example, before you started talking, I kind of had this frustration of like, what is like the lowest of low that is going to the fall down that is going to make them change? Like, wasn't it 2010? Wasn't it 2019? Wasn't it 2021? And I was feeling like it's kind of easy to spiral into that frustration and maybe like not feeling like you can see the end of this. And when you started talking about compassion and things like that, and feeling that there's always a way, like it started to feel a little bit lighter. So I feel like there's definitely a lot of, it feels like even more heavy that different conflicts that we've studied. So I feel like there is definitely a lot to look at there and heal, but it's possible still, you know? It's just very anxiety driven right now, but it's still possible, you know? So yeah, that'll be my conclusion. So heading into our last topic tonight is going to be uh something that happened in Venice. So the city Venice, the touristic city in Italy, that is very attractive to a lot of people around the world. They have finally installed something that we were talking about for a few years, which is an entry fee. This entry fee is supposed to be a test on how this works for a few months. And basically, this is about, I guess for them, it was about regulating the entry on the island. But the locals are not necessarily happy about that because it's kind of, they're saying it's kind of not how they want to make tourism. And of course, like they were saying that there is a lot of problems with like the ecological impact of tourism around the island, the main island of Venice, but like that they wanted to also welcome everybody and have a strong economical power there. And yeah, it's kind of a peculiar situation. And my feeling on it was that there was already like kind of a regulation and non-paying regulation happening there at the entrance of the city. So the entry fee is definitely something that people wanted to install in several cities that experience the same negative impact of tourism as Venice. And I'm saying like negative in terms of like noise, in terms of um, environmental issues and degradation of daily life and social life for the locals. So I'm talking like Barcelona, maybe, or Amsterdam. And now that they're putting it in place just as a test for a few months, like it seems like the locals are not necessarily happy with it, although I only found one source of that. So, and it didn't feel like it was that neutral. So I'm wondering, well, one source that sourced The Guardian. So you can understand how I felt like it was not necessarily neutral. I was speaking only on the behalf of a certain population, a certain group of people on the island. So yeah, I wondered how you guys felt about that because that's a very European problem, like the negative impact of tourism and trying to um, stop people from coming or at least regulating the daily entrances of this and how to do that. And yeah, how do you guys see these new choices, these new ways of doing tourism?
I mean, logically speaking, okay, like my first impression was if the problem is we have too many people coming into the city, charging people whatever it was, like $5
It's
to
just
enter
$5,
is not going to do anything. I can guarantee you.
It's just gonna make a lot of money and not
Yes.
do a lot.
I
'Cause, I mean, that wouldn't keep me out.
That
but
wouldn't keep
here's
us
my
out.
$5, let's go.
Everyone on this continent has $5
Right, you
to
know?
to
Yeah.
take.
That was
Then-
what the local were saying because the countries had made like at least 20,000 on the first few days of launching the program. So the locals were like, "Hey, is this for us or is this for your governmental economy?" So yeah, continue, please. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
so there's that. So also, like, logically, we do know that if you do charge an entry fee, you're collecting some money, which you can then use to try to offset some of the problems related to tourism. Like if there's trash, if there's like there needs to be infrastructural improvements made or maintenance done, like that the plumbing is clogged because so many people come through here and use it. So we need money to fix it, or something like that. So that does make sense. But there's also an element of like, I just don't know, because it sounded like the main problem was just the sheer number of people, and that it just overwhelms the city. And it's like someone who's a local there doesn't just absolutely doesn't get their experience of just living in their city. And I just feel like charging an entry fee, it doesn't solve or address that problem. It just seems like a no-brainer to me. But it seems like the government is like, you know, they're just like, hey, there's a problem here and we're trying to do something about it. We're doing something. And then the people are like, no, you're not. And
Right.
it's just
It doesn't feel like it's actually addressing the core problem.
yeah.
And it's just kind of this surface level thing where it's not actually like going to the locals and being like, hey, we see a problem here. Like, what
Yeah.
would feel good to you? Like, how can we actually make a solution that feels good to the locals?
Yeah, I like that. To give a little bit of insight of what you're telling, because it's really, really, really interesting. The excerpt that I have from the article is, I can tell you that almost the entire city is against it. Matteo Secchi, who leads Venetia.com, an activist resident group, is saying to The Guardian, all they're doing is transforming it into a theme park. So this is his idea, but still, like, it feels like it is a bad image of Venice. The fee will be mandatory only for access to Venice's historic center, mostly on weekends between April 25 and July the 14th. Residents, overnight visitors, students, and children on the 14th are exempt of the entry fee. And this is they're selling tickets, and they did make like 27K on the first day of it launching. So it kind of feels more economic than problem solving at the moment. And I really, really liked the way you worded your insights on that, because it feels like there's a lack of partnership with the locals. And I think like maybe the answer from negative effects of tourism would be actually to have a partnership and a building of community between the locals and the people that are visiting. So actually including the locals into the way the city is run, the way the tourists are handled. They're already benefiting economically from tourism anyway, so why not involve them in certain ways that they are the one guiding people in the city, asking them to respect the terrain and things like that. And obviously, like only on weekends, from a certain amount of time, is definitely not going to deter anyone from entering. So they are, this article, although not necessarily neutral, in my opinion, is shedding a lot of light on basically like the problem in this. And obviously the city and the national government denies that it's merely money making, but I would say it kind of feels like it for the locals anyway. And so if something feels like it for the locals on something as baseless as tourism and the number of people that are visiting your island, I would say there probably is a problem.
But so here's the question, right? So they've had these years and years of tourists streaming in and out of the country. And they've had years and years to find reasonable solutions to these potential environmental and other problems that they are now expounding, except they never ever did.
Mm.
And if they did, we're not certain to what extent they've done it. What is this going to change? Because it kind of feels like running at the same wall, but you're hoping that one of those times you're going to actually dematerialize and come out on the other side of the wall. Like the logic just doesn't feel, it doesn't feel logical. It doesn't feel well conceived. It doesn't feel like there's a true intention to actually build up the city or the historical sites or maintain them. Because if they had, and they'd had all this income from all these tourists for all these years, surely they would have had more foresight to start planning after they realized what the problems actually are.
Or maybe like more agreement from the local population. I mean, like they did forbade to some extent the cruise ship from stopping in the city center a year ago, I do think. But like this, and we don't have clear intentions, we only have denial that it is for money making. So even if it was done with the right intentions, this feels kind of like a desperation to grasp at. Maybe control the way tourism is going to be run, and I think a lot of people don't agree with that way. So yeah, yeah,
It feels kind of skanky, doesn't it?
I know.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to wear flimsy clothes and then you're going to complain that somebody's looking at you. Come on.
Yeah, that's a recurring problem for European tourism for a lot of people. Um, but yeah, I feel like contrary to other cities where there's actually a discussion with the local people of, hey, this is the way our culture is run. We would like you to respect it in this way, this way, this way, this way. They kind of went with a test that, yeah, definitely had feels like no attention, no foresight. So hopefully, like when this ends in July, like there will be like a better consideration of everyone's feeling on this. And the good thing is that it is just a test, and maybe the intention was actually to discuss how this felt after a few months with other people, which would be a good way actually. But yeah, looking forward to seeing how this opens up, how this changes. But it feels like there is definitely a different way to relate to tourism right now. And I think I think all of our topics tonight reflect a different way to just think about relating to other people in different ways. And I think there's definitely a need of change, but like a lot of people don't know how this change is going to look like. And so they're trying to throw some paint, wrongly or rightly, in order to make the change. But yeah, hopefully like they choose like something that feels like peace and partnership in most cases. Yeah. So I think that is all for today. Thank you to everyone who has watched us live on Facebook, and thank you to everyone who's watching us from YouTube. If you enjoy this discussion, definitely like, subscribe, and share so that we can do more of these. And if you have any suggestions for different topics, definitely comment so that we can consider them